Hi, and welcome to the webinar here. Nice to everybody to join. It looks like we've got a few people on the line here. Without further ado, let's kick it off. So today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence in healthcare, and specifically we're going to be talking about facial recognition technologies. So it's a really cool area, and I'm actually got the pleasure to be joined with a really good partner of Digital Nebula, Kairos, with Brian Brackeen, who's the founder over there. I'll just introduce what we're going to be talking about, and we'll get into some more detailed introductions from Brian. So the purpose of this webinar is to really understand how facial recognition technology can fit into the healthcare ecosystem. We understand, everybody understands what's going on in healthcare. It's a bit of a sector that is definitely has its fraughts of technology and integration and all these other things. But we think that the facial recognition adds a new data point into the understanding of patient care. And we believe that using the facial recognition technology and AI, we can help track health and other conditions. There was a study recently about that was done in the UK by DeepMind, which is a Google-owned company, that actually monitored eye conditions, and they had I think a million data points, and based on that data, they were able to predict various eye complaints. So we believe that it's all about the data and applying new ways, algorithms to that data to really feed that back into patient care. So about us, a quick overview. You can go to our website if you want a bit of a deep dive. But we're an AI solutions provider, professional services. The team is full of AI researchers, designers, etc. We focus on AI in the enterprise primarily. Doesn't mean we don't do others, but primarily it's our enterprise, which is like the Fortune 2000 type companies. We understand how these guys act, and we understand requirements around security and integrations to legacy systems, EHR systems, etc. The team is passionate about creating leading edge solutions, and it's really formed with the understanding that AI is the future, and we believe it will be for a lot of companies. We partner with Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Watson, and what we try to do is take a best of breed approach for AI solutions. We have an agile engagement model. Often businesses struggle to identify opportunities in AI. So what we do is we try to we sit with them and really understand what problems they could be faced with, and really dive into them with AI in mind, and quickly evaluate that problem to say, okay, is this an AI opportunity or not? And often when we do that, we break down those management silos, technology, and get all the people in the room who are the decision makers and also the technology guys who could really drive that in the enterprise. And we provide a best of breed practice framework. And my background personally is, I also invest a lot. I do a lot of angel investing, and I kind of taken that approach of angel investing, of how I evaluate startup ideas in my mind, and I'm taking that into the enterprise and get them to try to think like a startup a little way with AI. So why us? Like I said, we got extensive experience. We've worked with a lot of the CIOs in these Fortune 2000 space. We've got the relationships. We've also got a marketplace platform that we can plug and play different components, including healthcare. Now I'd like to pause just there and introduce my co-host today, Brian Brackeen. I'll just go on mute and.
Honored to be co-hosting. I'm Brian Brackeen, CEO of Kairos. We're a facial recognition, artificial intelligence company based in Miami, Florida. And there's actually a lot of overlap between our two organizations. We're very focused on facial recognition in the enterprise space. And we think that AI can be applied to so many different areas for business customers, and it really can change the game for them. And that's a big thing to say, because oftentimes when you're a large enterprise customer, very few things can really kind of move the needle at that size, at that scale. And we think artificial intelligence and facial recognition are some of those things that can really make a big difference. So a little bit about us. We're really good at a few different things. Facial recognition to, one, identify people. Two, understanding their emotions. And three, other things about them, like their demographics. So we can tell someone's kind of age, gender, attentiveness, things of that nature. And so, as you see on this slide here, there's just a menagerie of kind of different options, from emotion to age, attention, what the features are on someone's face, their gender. But it really kind of all comes down to a few key use cases. And in this conversation, we're really focused on how do you take all of the capabilities of the last slide, right, and apply those in the healthcare environment? How do we change outcomes? How do we make for better patient care? What you're seeing here is how quickly we can make some of these thoughts. So here, you can see we're tracking really closely someone's eyes, face, nose, mouth. In fact, we're looking for many more points than this, which is easier to show a small number here. So in this case here, you're seeing emotions. Really, the second someone's emotions change, we're able to pick those differences up and how deeply they're feeling those emotions. We're not just in a perfect environment, but also low light. We can tell how people feel. Even in almost a completely dark room, we're able to detect someone's emotions and who they are, age and gender. Doesn't matter if they kind of cover their face or not. Glasses, no glasses. They can even be wearing sunglasses, and we still know where their eyes are. This is called computational anatomy. And then here, the camera can be located above, below, beside. We're still able to track these points really, really quickly, every quarter second or less. And here, micro expressions are also very, very important. So if someone's kind of feeling something or grimacing or feeling a certain kind of pain, we can identify those facial movements.
We're just going to go through some use cases here of where we could potentially apply facial recognition in healthcare. So some of the use cases that we've come up with is detection of emotions over time. We believe that having this, especially for something like clinical trials, so if you can, if everybody's familiar with clinical trials, you have to, you try different drugs. Some of them are, are just past animal testing, and you might need to, you're testing blood work, you're testing other factors involved with healthcare, and the actual patient. But facial recognition, we believe that could also provide a really important data point, especially around, if skin color changes or facial expression changes. So if you look at the, the picture there, you got very positive expression, neutral, somewhat negative. Over time, we believe that if you monitor those data points, you could eventually come up with, okay, this patient, it says one for the blood work, but actually the impact on the emotion of the patient is actually deteriorating, and we should look into addressing that. So that's one use case here. Another one is pulling up medical records from conscious or mentally ill patients. In fact, Digital Nebula did a recent engagement with a customer where needed to do ID recognition. And you think about this, if you had like a small subset of identification documents for these types of patients, at-risk patients, potentially when they get to the emergency room, you could take a picture of that patient and suddenly get the records. And the important factor here is if there's any drug interactions that you should be aware of that sometimes you don't know, because either the patient doesn't have identification on them for whatever reason, or it's not clear what the condition is. And we believe that this use case could be in healthcare, it could be in law enforcement and other areas. But essentially, what you're trying to do is, for the doctor's point of view, is okay. Well, what is actually the problem here? And instead of them giving them the certain drug that could actually make the problem worse, it would quickly pull up their records. So we believe that that is a significant use case there. Another one is medical adherence. So often during clinical trials, I'm sorry to bring that one up again, but there's medicine that needs to be taken continuously over the trial. And often with the clinical trial, there's no way of really verifying that. So a use case could be is just have a simple mobile app using facial recognition. Obviously, it knows the face, it knows the patient, but it can also recognize other things about their mouth opening up and basically taking the pill. And is it the right pill? And you could recognize that maybe using other technologies like one of the other cloud providers have image recognition, or we could incorporate both APIs into that kind of solution. So that's another use case that we believe that could be relevant. Stroke recovery. Small facial changes and strokes. If anybody who's had a stroke, time is of the essence, but the patient care after a stroke, I think there's some statistics out there. Most stroke patients, I think they're in a 60% chance of them having a relapse of a stroke within I think it's 48 hours. So you have to monitor their behavior. Again, you could take into account other facial changes, but if the stroke was on a certain area of the face, side of the brain, I should say, you could detect changes on that side and also detect improvement over time. And again, you could include that in some kind of clinical trial, but we believe that just having those facial changes over time, having those data points, could detect very small changes in their facial expressions that could result in them having a relapse for stroke. So again, you could have all these different data points that you've got today around blood work, around heart rate, vital type blood work, monitors on the patient, but having that extra data point on facial, you could really combine that and create an algorithm to detect those changes and whether the patient could have a relapse of a stroke. So again, it's all about patient care and improving that. And what patients, especially stroke victims, once they're over that kind of risk factor, they do want that home recovery, and this could be a solution to do that. Another use case here is facial coloring over time. If anybody's ever seen any lung victims or who have lung issues or liver issues, there's one of the real indications of a worsening of a condition is actually the discolor of the skin. And again, we could take into account prior pictures of the patient, because obviously we need some kind of reference of skin color in a normal state. But if you can combine that with discoloring over time, you can detect whether there's that discolor happening. And in fact, I'll let you into a little story. So one of a neighbor, actually, when I was 10 years old, he had a nebulizer, and he was a home patient care. He had this huge machine next to him, and he lived alone. And one day, me and my friend, we went around and we tried to help older people to, with their care. And we went around and there was something going on, and the patient actually was the skin was, he was turning blue. And obviously we didn't know about that, but that was a condition that was going on for about an hour, but the patient couldn't do anything about it, couldn't raise an alarm, emergency, healthcare, anything like that. But if you can imagine that kind of scenario where you've got a simple webcam with this technology where the patient's at home and it's just monitoring those changes in skin color, as well as those other changes like stroke that we mentioned earlier, you can detect that over time and then maybe send that to a care provider or send it to the emergency room if something is not happening. So it indicates discolor. If you catch that quickly enough, you can really affect the change, and sometimes it is life or death situations for patient care. We now look at third-party compliances and security. So you want to incorporate a solution like this into, maybe it's a mobile app solution, maybe using one of the API from Kairos, great API, open. They've got a development license that you can get going and quickly, do some facial recognition. They incorporate this, but HIPAA is a mandate that was brought in by the actual Clinton administration a long time ago. And what it really is, the real purpose of it is to protect identities of patients, and to do that, there's compliances around identifying a patient records with the actual patient, and if those records are kind of held in storage, there's no way of identifying that in clear text format. So you have to do things like store that, de-identify it if it is in that record system. So there's no way of linking, for example, if I had a condition, a skin condition, or other problems, if I could identify myself with that skin condition or whatever it is, then that's a violation of HIPAA. Another part of HIPAA is if it's the value chain of HIPAA. So even if you're working with a doctor's and you've got that patient data, you have to sign what's called a business associate agreement with that provider. So because you're using that data, so it's really about that value chain. And if anybody in that value chain violates that patient data and exposes the patient with the condition, or you get hacked and other things, you can really get some heavy fines. And in worst case, you can actually get blacklisted for handling healthcare records. So it's something that you should really take into account. And the reason why we raise this really is so just so you're aware of it, but also to understand, how does that really fit into facial kind of data? Is that really HIPAA? Is that healthcare, or is it whatever? Now, I think there's a way that you can kind of work around the law in a way. Now, for a stroke victim or these other use cases, obviously you need to know other parts of that patient's data, but the facial expressions really are just data points. As long as there's no indication of that patient with those data points, I think you can probably get away with some of that data being stored at rest and other places where there's no identifying party, and maybe you can use all that data with an algorithm, right? So then, as long as there's no identification, I think you should be okay. So I'll bring in Brian into this discussion to see if he's got any points around this. I know he's worked with a number of healthcare patient companies as well. Have you got any?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit with folks about using tokenization to really keep, to your earlier points, the data and the people apart from each other. So sometimes customers will send in a token that represents something to them, but nothing to us. They'll send us, number 78426, right? And then we will tell them all that we know about 78426. And we'll send that back to them through the API. And then who that is stays inside their environment. And on our side, we're not seeing any patient data. The other point is we have an SDK as well as an API. So, a lot of jargon, but what that means is someone can run our entire suite inside their environment without sending anything to the outside world. So some of our larger customers can also do that to use our tools without being out of compliance for HIPAA.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. So that the dedication of privacy, encryption at rest and in transit is really important. So I think now we could potentially open it up to any questions that we might have in the audience. We'd love to hear any feedback. Is there any, does this make sense, this webinar? Does, it's really to get those kind of ideas flowing of what you could do with facial technologies in healthcare, and some examples that we've had. So if there's any questions on the floor, please let us know. So we've got one question that's come in. One of the attendees here, they want to know about this case that we had with stroke victims. How does that relate to clinical trials, and how can we be sure that with the clinical trials, do we give out any recommendations around medicines that we could potentially use to match outcomes? So that's a great question. I think that, one of the approaches to take with this, obviously, if facial recognition is part of the trial, it's great to go back to the the actual provider, whether it's Pfizer or one of these others, and maybe just let them know about how facial recognition could be included in such a trial, and what that cost would be. So if you think about it, most people have smartphones. I gave the example earlier of maybe some kind of webcam or other things. Now, if there is any kind of trials out there where you're looking to do this, maybe there's a Kickstarter campaign, or we can come up with a way that we can have a HIPAA compliant piece of hardware that they can link to the patient, put it on the a place that they can monitor the face, and include our solution in there as part of that trial. Obviously, there's a bit of cost involved with getting those cameras out there into the market, but we believe once we've done that once and we have the data, then we can include it in the trial. And really, like I said, I think this is very new, and we're trying out the facial part of this into the overall clinical trial approach. So hopefully that answers that question around how we can, how can we include that in the clinical trial, and what that approach would be. Let's see if we've got any other questions here. We've also got a quick poll as well that we like to do. Feel free to do the poll now. We just want to know from the the folks on the line, who have we got interested in what sparked your interest? If you're in this field, you're a practitioner, or you're a tech leader, or you're an engineer, or you're just interested in this space. Just a quick poll now. We're just going to take take a minute just for people to vote. Okay, we've finished the poll. So it looks like we got a lot of leaders here, which is great, and we got a few healthcare practitioners. Not many engineers or business leaders, but that's okay as well. Wow, that's very astonishing, actually, those results. So again, to kind of get this in your kind of healthcare establishment, you unfortunately have to be that innovator. And after this webinar, we're happy to share the slides with you folks. And I think the first step really is having that idea inside your organization and figuring out whether the leaders of that organization are receptive. And I take that approach of build, measure, learn. So build the solution. You got an idea. Hopefully you can do it yourself. If not, feel free to call us. We're quite happy to help. And then measure it. So is it effective? Are we getting the data points we need? Does it make sense? And then learn from that and feed that back into the cycle. And maybe you build a better mousetrap next time. So, don't stop innovating. I think that's the key. And we're going to close the webinar unless there's any more questions from the folks. We appreciate everybody joining today.